My philosophy is very simple. It's been transmitted by my mom, and for me, food is an act of love, and the garden is at the very center of this love. In this episode, we will celebrate Swiss Chard, and they are beautiful, multicolored, and they grow nearly all year round.
Hi, my name's John Driscoll. I'm the head vegetable gardener here at Manoir, Quat'Saisons, and today we're looking at chard. Here in the gardens at Manoir, we actually have about an acre in total that's split up into 4 separate sections, mainly just so we can use good crop rotation, which is very important in an organic garden. If you keep planting the same things again and again in the same area, you'll eventually start to harbour pests and diseases that attack particular families of plants. We're actually in the root section today, which is where we have all of our chards, celeriacs, carrots, beetroots. So we're mainly in the areas for all of our different root veg. Yeah, so with chard, this is probably one of the most used products at Le Manoir. It's really good for a smaller vegetable garden because you get a huge amount of product from a very small amount of space. It grows pretty much all year, so we're starting off sowing around March time, starting to harvest usually around June, and then it will go through really until you start getting the first hard frost in winter. Here we have actually 5 different varieties of chard. There are 4 that make up the coloured section in here, and then we've got another 3 separate varieties that are actually in this section, which is mainly your Swiss chard, the rhubarb chard, and the bright lights, which is an amazing yellow colour. If you would like to try growing chard at home, one of the best things to do is find a good location. You want pretty good sunlight, you want some good free draining soil. This is a plant that ideally would be situated in the Mediterranean, so as you can tell from that, it likes quite dry conditions and needs a lot of full sun. Now you can do 2 things. You can either try and start it off very early if you've got somewhere under cover. So you could sow individual seeds into little modules and then plant them out around that sort of late March going into April time. Or you can just get, once the soil starts to warm up with a little bit of sun, you can then try sowing direct actually into its position where it's going to stay for the whole year. You can actually eat it at any stage. So even when it's very young, just as a baby leaf, you could actually pick them then and add them to into salads and things like that. Or you can wait until it matures a little bit further. Like at this time of year, we're now in October, which it seems very sunny, which is quite unusual for this time of year. But it is actually making us still have a really good crop of chard at the moment. See here, I've actually got some of the lovely rhubarb chard. You've got the fantastic white stem of the Swiss chard here. And then we also have this amazingly vibrant bright lights chard, which is this fantastic yellow colour as well. Chard's an extremely versatile plant. The greens are delicious, the blades are delicious, you can stir fry it, you can wilt it down. There's multiple ways of actually using it as well. Looking after chard, there's just a few things you need to keep a bit of an eye on. If it gets too warm and too hot and it doesn't get enough water, you might get quite prone to actually bolting, so actually go into flower quite early. So at the same time, you don't want it too wet because it can rot, but at the same time not too dry. So really it's about just consistent watering. The other thing that's really important is some of the husbandry of the plant. Chard is very susceptible to slug damage. So it's always a good idea to keep the bottoms of the plant nice and tidy, and always removing any of the blades that are starting to either rot down or fall to the floor, just to actually keep it a bit clean and a bit tidy around the bottoms. Another good thing with chard as well is it's not too hungry as a plant. Again, if you imagine the Mediterranean, it's quite sandy, there's not a huge amount of nutrition in the soil. We just every year in the beds, just before we actually come to sow or plant the chard, it just has a light layer of compost over the top. A good wet site when we're first planting. After a while then we'll start looking at if we need to water if there hasn't been any rain already. So I've been mentioning slugs. Now they are probably the main pest for Swiss chard. Here at Le Manoir, being organic, we don't really do a lot really to deter them too much. We create these little heavens for lots of these animals. You're going to have to expect a few of them come in. Home, Really you could do a mixture of things. I mean, as I mentioned before, good husbandry around the plants, keeping it clean and tidy. That doesn't give the slugs and snails anything to actually harbour underneath. Also, you could try using mixtures of coffee grounds, eggshells, or you can get these really interesting like coir pellets. It's like a coconut skin which you can lay around the plants as well, because that sticks to their body and is just a bit of a deterrent. For me, chard is probably the most important product that I grow. It gives you so much in product. I mean, 2 Swiss chard plants will feed a family of 4 for 2 years, depending on weather and if you keep on looking after the plant properly. So for me, in a smaller space, this is one of the most ideal products to grow. The ideal conditions and soil types for growing this is really something that's free draining, something with a fairly neutral pH balance as well. But most importantly, it's about free draining. Very clayey conditions. You might have a little bit of rot that could possibly develop if the ground stays too wet all the time. So really, if that is the case, dig the soil out a little bit, incorporate either a bit of sand or some type of topsoil, and then mix that all together just to create a better free draining soil. The best way for storing this, if you're going to be picking it and not necessarily using it straight away, is really in the fridge is the best place to use it. I'd say the greens are always better used fresh. Try and use them as fresh as possible, but the blades will store in the fridge okay for 2-3 days. If for longer storage, especially with the Swiss chard, it's very good for pickling or even making things like kimchi, sauerkrauts, those sorts of things. So it's also a really good plant to preserve. Freezing it will probably separate the cells a little bit too much, so it might become a little bit mushy. I've never tried freezing it myself, but it could be worth a go.
Hello, my name is Mark Peregrine. I'm the director of the Raymond Blanc Cookery School, and today we are going to create an absolutely amazing Swiss chard and Comté cheese tart. Obviously the Comté cheese is from Raymond Blanc's region in the Jura, but you could use cheese, any hard cheese of your choice, and the Swiss chard, which grows easily 8 to 9 months of the year, easy to grow, is so versatile. You could use, I suppose, spinach if you wanted to as an alternative. But today, obviously being in season, from the garden, as you can see in front of me, we're going to make the most of it. When it comes to the recipe, obviously we need ingredients to make a lovely short crust pastry case. So therefore we'll have butter, flour. Usually short crust, you're looking at half the weight of fat to flour. Generally we use butter, but if you wanted to use a different fat of your choice, that's up to you. I'll be honest with you, if you don't make pastry, and a lot of people don't, you can get some really good short crust already, in the shops, ready to roll. That would look for one that contains butter. Again, butter in cooking is about flavor. Point here is plain flour, butter, and a little bit of salt and the eggs also to bind it. You're looking at 1 egg, 250 grams of flour and 125 grams of butter. So it's always half fat to flour. And if your eggs are a bit small, just add a bit of water to bring it together. For the filling, basically you're mixing eggs and cream. Personally, I would use, if you can get hold of it, whipping cream. What we as chefs would say is for every 100 millilitres of cream, 1 medium-sized egg will set it, as in a custard set. The cheese, obviously I'm using the Comté cheese today. In theory, you could use any hard cheese of your choice. So, any Emmental Gruyere, or you could use in this country, I would definitely go for a really nice mature cheddar, something with a bit of kick to it. Combination of the Swiss chard, the texture of the stalk and the slight acidity balances beautifully with the crunchiness of the pastry, which in turn, the richness of the custard that holds it all together. So when you put the three together with a lovely glass of Jura wine or Riesling or something, it's a marriage made in heaven. The stalk we separate from the leaf, only because the stalk is actually a lot more fibrous and therefore the cooking time is a little bit longer. Having washed it, all we would do is just cut it into smaller pieces, bite-sized pieces, and then the leaf, the quickest way to do the leaf, I'll be honest with you, is you actually take the leaf and just scrunch it up, and then literally, much easier to hold onto, and then just again, with a knife of your choice, slide through, keeping that separate, and then we'll put that halfway through the cooking of the stalk. We add the leaf to the stalk so they finish the cooking together. And then that is now off to the school, and we'll show you how to cook the leaf and the stalk. So here we are, back with the Swiss chard we brought up from the garden. And what we're going to do now is show you the preparation of cooking. This is a really simple method. We use this method of cooking any vegetables. If you boil vegetables just in rolling boiling water, you're going to lose up to 80% of the nutritional benefits to the water. So the way we will do this, so I retain 80% of the nutritional benefits, is we put a little bit of water just to cover the bottom of the pan. So what you're really doing in effect is going to create a steaming environment. That's why the lid is there. Put a bit of butter in. It'd be rude not to in a French house, but that's up to you. That's optional, okay? And then a little bit of salt and pepper. Remember, salt is the catalyst in bringing out flavour, whereas that pepper is adding flavour. So a couple of turns, black or white pepper. Put the stalks that we chopped up earlier in the garden. Now, the thing with Swiss chard is it's not something like a salad leaf you're going to eat raw. It's too bitter, it's too acidic. But because of those starches that all vegetables contain and the slow, gentle steaming, those starches convert into what we call sugars. It's not table sugar, it's just natural sugar. Think of an onion when it's translucent and gently cooked through. There's a lovely sweetness. So I'm not looking for colour. I want it just to slowly cook, go from that raw state to that lovely sweet, soft, translucent state. We would then go in with the leaves. Cooking time, 5 or 6 minutes is all that's required. And have a look, try one. That's the best way rather than timing it, is look at it, see if it's translucent. Knife slowly sinks through, you know, just like a potato when it's cooked. And then we transfer those to a plate and we leave them to cool down. Because obviously when we build the tart, I need everything to be cold, easier to handle. When it comes to the actual cooking of the tart case, so to get to this, what I have in front of me, there are two ways of doing it. You could either use a traditional pastry ring. So in other words, we're lining the ring and what we're doing is baking it blind. When you're baking blind, the whole point is that we, as you can see in front of me, we pre-bake, we pre-cook the pastry. That way it remains crispy. So what you would do to bake blind is you take your raw pastry case that's lined the ring, the mold, you put some baking parchment in with some baking beans, rice, baking beans, whatever you like, and that creates the weight. So the whole point of the weight is to hold the sides, because if I ain't got any sides, nothing will hold inside the tart shell. And then about halfway through, you know, when it starts to get a bit of colour on the edge, we lift out those beans. I put a little bit of beaten egg if you want to, you don't have to. It gives you like a firmer glaze setting to the tart, and back until, as you can see, the whole pastry case goes golden brown. So in theory, you could prepare those, keep them in a biscuit tin, an airtight container in your cupboard for 2 or 3 days, and then put a filling of your choice. So I take, today obviously the Comté, and we're just going to put, to begin with, a thin layer on the bottom of the pastry case. And then I'm going to put just higgledy-piggledy, doesn't matter on this one how it looks at this stage, some of the leaves and scatter some of the actual stalks. And then we're going to go in with a second layer of cheese. So you can see we're really filling it, and we're just going to use enough of the egg custard, which I'll come to in a minute, just to seep between all of that, and when it bakes that will set and hold it all together. And now I'm going to again put some more of the leaf. But like I said, it's up to you how you do this. We're going to get this sort of more design to the top, because this will just rest nicely into the custard. That is now ready for the egg custard filling. So all we have, as I mentioned earlier, is eggs and cream. And whisk them to get the eggs up. We add the cream, a little bit of salt and pepper, and if you like a bit of nutmeg, you could always mix a little bit of nutmeg into there. Pour a small amount in as I'm about to, and give that 30 seconds to a minute. Let it seep in before you then add more if you need to. So just as I'm about to show you. So pour it gently, and now just let that settle. So it seeps between the charred stalks and the leaves and the cheese. That's already set itself. And then we just top it. And again, like I said, don't go above the level of the tart shell. It's basically a mixture that is holding all our vegetables and cheese together, but you don't need to overdo it. And then that we're going to place into the oven. We're going at 180 degrees centigrade, 175. And then what we do, we take the tray, gently obviously, because of the custard in it, to the oven. And then onto the oven tray it goes, oven rack, whatever. So it's nice and flat. When the tart is cooked, the custard will not be moving. In other words, it's set. On average, it should take around 150 to 180. You're looking anything from 20 to 30 minutes. But if you're not sure, just touch it. It'll be firm to the touch. But ideally, go for that golden brown as you're about to see. We have a beautiful Swiss Chard Comté cheese tart. As you can see, we've got a gorgeous golden brown to it. And then the lovely thing with this, to serve it with a lovely side salad, you can accompany this with crudités. It's a beautiful dish that you can do most of the year. And I can feel the crunch of the pastry as the knife goes through. Pretty guarantee on this one, guys, we're gonna have a lovely crunchy little base to this. And then let's just get our slice, and then onto the plate we go. And here we go, the best part of my job. So if you look, you can see, if I can hold on to it, it's got this lovely golden brown, lovely crispy, full of flavour. Bon appétit.